Old Grumpy Hunter here. In this video, I'm going to discuss point of aim versus point of impact. Before I go too far into this video, I want to give a shout out to my biggest fan, Lila. Lila is my granddaughter, who is also the catcher on multiple softball teams, including her high school team, the Taylor County Cardinals. There are countless videos, websites, etc. online about shot placement, and this is not meant to be another one of them. What I want to discuss is many times your point of aim is not your point of impact. Please remember, I'm talking about crossbows here, but this can also pertain to vertical bows as well as firearms. Speaking of crossbows, you realize that August is Crossbow Appreciation Month over on Death by Bungie in the Kingdom of Bungie?
What do you mean when you say point of aim versus point of impact?
Point of aim is where you want the arrow to go. Or is it really? The point of impact is where the arrow hits, and it's not always the same place as your point of aim. There are multiple reasons why point of aim and point of impact are not the same. Let me just list a few of the most obvious ones. 1. Buck or any type of animal fever. We've all been there. We've been in the stand or the blind for who knows how long. It could be minutes or it could be hours, and all of a sudden, out pops your target quarry. Your heart starts pounding in your chest and your hands are shaking. 2. Animal nervousness. How calm is the animal? Is it high alert or is it relaxed? Are there others around affecting it? 3. Did you just make a poor shot? The example would be jerking the bow at the time of the shot. 4. Too long of a shot. Are you shooting outside your comfort range? The longer the shot, the longer the cone of error is. External forces. Is the wind the same at the target as is at your location? Same speed and or direction? Is there an obstruction that you have not noticed between you and the target? Something like a small branch or twig? 6. Did you practice shooting the arrow setup you're hunting with? Those broadheads that are said to fly like a field point don't always do that. One often overlooked reasons why your point of aim and your point of impact are different is because the center of the scope is sitting an inch or greater above the arrow. Now, to the meat and potatoes of this video. Arrows do not fly straight, nor do bullets. They are shot in an arc. Yes, I said that, and I know you're going to say I'm wrong, but wait a minute and I'll explain it. Here are 3 pieces of clip art that I've used in the past. What do you see they all have in common besides being vertical bows? All 3 are pointing up. First one's pointing up at about 4.5 degrees. The next one's a little bit exaggerated at 32 degrees. The young lady is pointing up at 1.5 degrees, so thereabouts. I realize those are drawings, but did the artist know something? Yes, I agree that different arrow setups and bullets are going to fly flatter than others. This is because of the weight, the speed, the shot distance. In 1687, Sir Isaac Newton introduced the universal law of gravitation, where he stated that every particle attracts every other particle in the universe with a force directly proportional to the product of the masses and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them.
What does that mean?
It basically states that every object has a gravitational pull, and the size of the objects and the distance between them affects the gravitational pull. For those of us on Earth, we don't have anywhere near as much gravitational pull as the Earth does, so we really don't have much effect on other objects. For example, the mouse sitting on my desk as I'm recording this is being pulled by multiple gravitational forces. The desk, myself, the computer, and Earth, just to name a few. It's also pulling on those objects, but because the Earth has the greatest pull, it's winning the contest. The formula looks like this. F equals G times the quantity M1 times M2 divided by R squared, which means the force equals the gravitational force between the bodies M1 and M2. Those are the masses of the bodies. R is the distance between the center of the two bodies. G is the universal gravitational constant.
What is the value of G?
The value of G is 6.673 times 10 to the negative 11th Newton meters squared per kilogram squared. Now that really helps, doesn't it? To simplify things, the force of gravity at the Earth's surface is about 32.1740 feet per second squared. Getting back to the three factors I mentioned before. Weight. Even though mass and weight are not the same thing, frequently they are interchanged in discussions, and for this discussion it's going to be one of them. As you see in the formula, mass is mentioned twice, where m1 is the mass of the Earth and m2 is the mass of the arrow. Speed. The faster the arrow, the less time gravity affects arrow drop, which results in a flatter flight to the given distance. For example, a 30-yard shot will take an arrow with an initial speed of 300 feet per second, 0.31 seconds, to reach the target, where the same 435-grain arrow shot at 400 feet per second will take 0.23 seconds. Shot distance. The longer the shot, more time gravity pulls on the arrow. Using these two arrows we talked about out to 100 yards, the two arrows have the following times. 1.06 seconds for the 300 foot per second arrow and 0.8 seconds for the 400 foot per second arrow. Personally, I don't recommend taking a 100-yard shot at an animal because too many things can go wrong. What's really happening when you take a shot at these different distances? In this image seen here, you're looking through one of my scopes. Yes, it shows 100 yards, but I've never tried that distance. On a good day, it would take 0.91 seconds for my arrow to go 100 yards. That's about 3.4 times longer than the sound of the shot takes to get to 100 yards. Earlier I mentioned that the scope is sitting higher than the arrow. On my crossbow, the center of the scope is 2 inches above the center of the arrow. If the arrow is not traveling in an arc and gravity is not a factor, then the point of impact would be 2 inches below the point of aim. Assuming your bow is sighted at the 20-yard line, that's what the manufacturer for my scopes recommends, and your target is 20 yards, your point of aim and your point of impact should be the same. But what if your target's further out? Let's say your target's out to 40 yards. What are you really doing? You end up raising the front of the bow up to compensate for the pull of gravity during the longer flight times. You put the scope's 40-yard line where you want the point of impact to be, and in your mind, that is your point of aim. But as far as the crossbow scope combo is concerned, the point of aim is where the 20-yard line is at.
What? I'm aiming at 40 yards.
Not really. You're using the 40-yard line because that's where you want the arrow to go. But remember, the bow is sighted at 20 yards, and that's where the arrow will be heading. But due to the gravitational pull, the arrow is dropping more and more the longer it is in the air. Furthermore, the arrow is slowing down the longer it is in the air also. Your mind thinks you're shooting at the 40-yard line, the desired point of impact, but you're shooting at the spot on the deer, in this case, where the 20-yard line is at, because the arrow is traveling in an arc to compensate for the pull of gravity during the further distance. Assuming you're shooting flat and horizontal, let's look at how long it takes the arrow to hit the ground. Standing on the ground with a crossbow at about 60 inches, about shoulder high, as soon as the arrow leaves the bow, there is zero velocity downward and gravity starts pulling on it. It will take 0.5575 seconds to hit the ground. It will be traveling downward at the time of impact with the ground at 17.937 feet per second. Looking back at the two arrows shot at 100 yards, the 300 foot per second arrow took 1.06 seconds, and the 400 foot per second arrow took 0.80 seconds. Shooting flat and horizontal, neither arrow would reach the target. At 300 feet per second, the arrow will make it about 52.5 yards before hitting the ground. The 400 foot per second arrow will get about 70 yards.
I'm shooting at 30 yards.
That's a good point. Again, you are shooting flat and horizontal. At 300 feet per second, your arrow will drop 18.1 inches at 30 yards. The 400 foot per arrow will have dropped 10.2 inches. As I said before, more arrow speed will flatten the curve, but you cannot totally eliminate it. Thank you for watching this Old Grumpy Hunter presentation. Please give it a big thumbs up, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to push the notification bell.